remove the wheel, use a 21mm socket. Take the lug nuts off. Take the wheel off. With the wheel speed sensor harness right here, I want to unclip it from the knuckle right there, right here, and then also right here. And there's a connector on this side. Disconnect the connector. You can use a trim tool to pry it out from the frame, and then push down on the button right here. You may need a screwdriver or a pick. Push down on that and then slide it off. Just like that. Then we'll set this aside. Now to take this cotter pin off, you can use some side cutters. Slide that out. Use a 22mm socket. Take this nut, we're going to loosen it up. So I'm just going to leave the nut on a few threads, and then we're going to separate the ball joint from the knuckle. Now I'm going to use a pickle fork to separate the ball joint. Now I can take this nut off and just slide this out of the way. You don't want this sliding out too far because you're going to have the axle come out. So just keep this over here. You can use some type of bungee cord or something to hold this in place. I'm going to take off this inner fender well. It's going to be easier to shoot on camera. You don't necessarily need to take this off. You could pull this out of the way, but it will make it a little easier. There's mud flaps on this vehicle, so I'm going to use a 10mm socket. Take these 3 bolts out. There's another bolt under here. Use the same 10mm socket. If there's any push pins underneath, you want to take those out. There's a screw right here. There should be another one over here. This vehicle doesn't have it. Take those out. Use a Phillips head screwdriver. And on this side, there's screws right here, here, and underneath here. There's 2 under there. Use a 7mm socket. Take those out. There should be one more right there. And just grab the inner fender liner. Just slide it out. Now we need to take these 2 bolts out. There's one on this side, one on the other side. And there's a nut on the back side here. So you're going to need a 19mm socket or a wrench you could get on this side. And then on the other side, use a 19mm socket and take the nut off. That nut off, slide that bolt out, and do the same on the front one. Now we're going to pull this out. If you need to, you can use a pry bar, but you shouldn't have to. You just slide it out. Now take the new arm, slide it in position. Might have to tap it in place. And take the bolts. Get the bolts started. Put the nuts on. Now we want to tighten these bolts down. What you want is this arm as close to ride height as possible. What you can do is take a socket, just slide it under here. This happens to be a 19mm socket, and that's going to be pretty close. What would be ideal is putting everything back together, putting it down on the ground and letting the weight of the vehicle be on it and then torquing these, but that's not realistic. It's hard to get to these while the tire's on and all that stuff, so this will do just fine. And I'm going to torque these bolts to 94 foot-pounds. At this point, you can pull this socket out, take this cover off. You want to throw that away. That's just for shipping. Now I'll just slide this into the knuckle, get that lined up, get the castle nut on. Now we'll torque this nut to 58 foot-pounds. And if the castle nut doesn't line up with the hole, you can tighten it a little bit more so the cotter pin goes through. That's good. Slide the cotter pin through. Take some side cutters. I'm going to bend this. Bend it around. Then you can trim the excess, just like that. And take the wheel speed sensor harness, slide that back into the brackets. And plug the connector in. And push it down. Lock it in place. Now take the shield and just slide it back in position. Make sure everything lines up the way it was. If there was any push pins that you had, push those back in. This vehicle doesn't have those. Now I'm going to install the mud guard and the screws and tighten them all down. And all of these screws. Get those lined up and tighten them down. And put the wheel back on. And the lug nuts. Now I'm going to torque the lug nuts to 98 foot-pounds in a cross pattern to tighten the wheel down evenly. And I prefer to double check, so just go around one more time. Take off your wheel lock key. Keep in mind, after you're done this repair, you want to take the vehicle to a local garage to have it aligned so that you don't have premature tire wear.